Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. If you are new, hi, my name is Kelsey. If you are not new, I truly appreciate you coming back. Today we are going to be going through the Britney Spears Woman in Me book. I read this in 2 sittings, maybe 3. I was a diehard Britney Spears fan when I was growing up. I wanted to be her and I thought that I could. So this book I had on pre-order. I was ready for it. It's very interesting. As someone who has been a fan of Britney pretty much my entire life, there is stuff in here that I had no idea about that I still found very interesting. So I am going to go through the book. I'm kind of basically going to give you guys the Cliff Notes version. So if you have not read this book and you don't want any spoilers, skip this video. If you have read the book and you just kind of want to like hear some other opinions, I kind of think that'll be fun because it's like a little mini book club. Also, if you don't want to read it, this is pretty much going to be a good summary of like the main points. I might be forgetting some things. There might be little stories that are left out, but for the most part, I tried to get the main stories and like focal points in here so we could kind of discuss it. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. Okay, so this book goes kind of chronologically for the most part. So it starts with Britney being born in Kentwood, Louisiana to her mom, Jamie and Lynn. So the book for the most part does go in chronological order. So it is going to start with Britney and her parents, Lynn and Jamie Spears, and her grandparents. So Britney had an amazing relationship with her grandmother. She was named after her. Her grandma was from London, and she was just this very well put together, well-to-do woman. She was going to move to the South with her American soldier boyfriend. So that is what she did, and it is said that from the day she moved to the day she passed, she missed London. And her husband never let her go back because he was scared that if she went back once, she would never come back again. So he was very controlling. Unfortunately, Britney's grandmother did suffer through an abusive relationship with Britney's grandfather, and she suffered 3 miscarriages, and she did lose a baby at a very young age, and this traumatized her. Eventually, her husband did institutionalize her. They did put her on lithium, and she took her own life on the grave of that lost child. So now Jamie and Lynn get together, which are Britney's parents, and he becomes an alcoholic, and Lynn actually divorces him, but his family begs her to take him back, and she does. When she first took him back, he kind of got his shit together. He started a fitness business, a construction business, and he kind of seemed to be going on the right path. Britney reflects that they were doing so well that they would talk about all the crawfish boils that would happen in the backyard, and Britney did mention that she thinks that her parents did participate in speed to stay up all night because she has no clue how they could stay up any other way. And after this, around this time, Britney was born, and she hung out with her grandma a lot. She didn't want to be in her house too much because her mom and dad would fight, and it was said that Jamie would sometimes come home and he would pass out on the couch, or he would just be so drunk that he had no idea what was going on, and Lynn would just be yelling at him but getting nowhere, and Britney would come out of her room at 4 o'clock in the morning from getting no sleep, yelling at her mom, begging her to stop yelling, just give him some food and leave him alone. And so Britney found an escape with her grandmother, and one day they were in the car and she got into a car accident, and after that, Britney was no longer allowed to be with her grandmother unsupervised. This broke Britney. She really, really loved her grandmother. Eventually, her dad's businesses did start to fail and he started to drink again, and that's when those fights would happen. Britney did say that there were multiple occasions that she would get into the car with him and she did not like being in the car because he would mutter to himself and just speak incoherently, and this really freaked her out. But later on in the book, she does reflect back and she thinks that her dad was self-medicating from the abuse that he suffered as a child. His dad put a lot of pressure on him to be this great athlete and be this great person. So she believes that her dad was kind of suffering with his own abusive tendencies. She did reflect and say that her dad would just be gone for days on end, but when he was gone, these days were peaceful because there was no fighting. He would come back and that fighting would resume, and Lynn would just be yelling at him all night. But during the day, she wanted to portray this perfect household. Brittany's house was the cool house. It was the house that everybody would kind of go to. It always looked immaculate. And so Lynn took a lot of pride in kind of putting that facade forward and not showing what was happening really behind closed doors. Brittany had been singing since she was about 3 or 4, a lot in the choir and just kind of around town and little gigs and stuff. And she heard about the Mickey Mouse Club holding auditions. This was held in Atlanta, a few hours away, and there were thousands of kids that were going to go to this audition, and she was just one of the many kids going through the process. But when she was asked how old she was, she said that she was 9, when in reality she was 8, and you had to be 10 to get into this club. So they told her no, and they told her to come back when she was a little bit older. So she didn't get in the first time. So her and this other girl, Christina Aguilera, I don't know if you've heard of her, they both got told to come back when they were a little bit older. So they both got denied at the same time. At this time, Brittany did go back home to Louisiana, and she started to wait tables at the age of 9. This was at, I believe, her family's local restaurant, but still, she was waiting tables at the age of 9. When she was at the Mickey Mouse Club auditions, the casting director did give her the name and number of a casting agent, which Brittany did reach out to about a year later, and she went out to New York and she did sign with this casting agent. Jamie Lynn was born shortly after that, which is Brittany's little sister, and after having Jamie Lynn, Brittany's mother, was sewing up one of her dance costumes and she threw it, and Brittany was so confused at why this happened. And then she saw the hemorrhaging blood. She said there was just a lot of blood everywhere, and this turned out to be a postpartum hemorrhage, which is not super uncommon, but this really traumatized Brittany, and she was just fearful of anything happening to her mother from then on. She did kind of round this chapter out by saying that she had really big dreams and wanted to become like Dolly Parton, Madonna, Whitney Houston, but it almost seemed like the smaller, simpler goals were harder to achieve, such as her dad not drinking or her parents not fighting. This just seemed like an unattainable dream for her to have, which is such a sad statement because sometimes you think that the people who quote unquote have it all do have it all, when in reality they also have their stuff that they're going through. And it's just a reminder that you really don't know what's going on behind closed doors, because I remember just thinking that Brittany was just the best and she had to have this amazing life that was just going well for her and her parents loved her, when in reality it's not that her parents didn't love her, but there was a lot of volatile fighting in her childhood, which is just so sad. So Brittany kind of gets her next little break during Star Search. She does make it through the first 2 rounds and then she does get eliminated. The host was Ed McMahon, and this is when the infamous interview of Ed McMahon interviewing Brittany and asking her if she had a boyfriend, and she said that boys are mean. When we stand together, it's all fun. After this, Brittany did go on to play an understudy in a Broadway role. This was a play that was called Ruthless, and in it she played this sociopathic child, and she was the understudy with another young actress. Her name was Natalie Portman, which I'm sure you've heard of. And at this point, Brittany, her mother, and Jamie Lynn were all living in an apartment in New York City, and Brittany eventually did get the main role as the sociopathic child, and her life just got turned upside down. She was doing 2 shows on Saturdays, staying up till midnight for rehearsals, just day in, day out. She was working on this Broadway play. But for Brittany, that was validation that she could really do this, and she loved that part of her life when she was on Broadway. It did come to an end when she thought that she would be able to go home for Christmas, but they wanted her to do a show instead, so she actually just quit the show. Shortly after this, she would get her second shot at the Mickey Mouse Club, and this time she would actually get in. When she went to go audition for the club, she was actually just playing basketball on her middle school basketball team, and she said she loved it. She just wanted to be this normal kid who played basketball. And yet here she was going to land this big gig for the Mickey Mouse Club. She did say that the Mickey Mouse Club was basically a boot camp for people wanting to get into the entertainment industry. She did kind of say that the Mickey Mouse Club was a little bit cliquey, and it was kind of based on who shared dressing rooms. So her, Christina, and this other girl, Nikki, would share a dressing room, and the three of them really looked up to the older people like Ryan Gosling, Tony Lucca, and Carrie Russell. During the Mickey Mouse Club is when her and Justin would actually connect and meet each other. And while doing the Mickey Mouse Club, Brittney had found out that her grandmother had passed, and Justin's mom was actually the one who paid for Brittney's flight back home when she couldn't afford it. She really did say that it was just like one big family there, and they were playing Truth or Dare one night, and Justin kissed her to a Janet Jackson song. And after the Mickey Mouse Club show was over, she just went back to Kentwood, Louisiana, and started to live a normal life. This became a pattern in Brittney's life that started here, of her wanting to have this fame, but also wanting to have this normal at-home, play on your school's basketball team, be nobody life. And this seemed to be a very big reoccurring thing for Brittney throughout her life, and this is kind of when that balance started. So at this time, her mom, Lynn, did start to introduce her to daiquiris and White Russians. So Brittney said that she loved the taste of White Russians, and she would really just sip on them like going to the beach or just any time of day. She also smoked her first cigarette at 13, and she is in 8th grade at the time. So there is one time where Brittney is driving the car with her mom, Lynn, and baby Jamie Lynn in the back, and her mother suspects her of smoking. She asks to smell her hands. She takes Brittney's hand away from the steering wheel to smell it, and Brittney lost control of the car. They do run into a telephone pole, and Brittney says that if it would have been moved a different way or anything, there's no way they could have been there. The way that they crashed, it's a miracle that they were alive. While focusing on being grateful to be alive and just going through this horrible crash, her mom completely forgot about the cigarettes, and it just was never brought up again. So Brittney then kind of jumps to her dating one of her brother's friends. Her brother did end up hating this guy because he was dating his little sister, but Brittney was infatuated with him. This boyfriend caused her to miss a lot of school. She would just ditch or just never go. And eventually the school caught on, called her mom, let her know, and Brittney was forced to make up the days. She does reflect on this as beautifully normal, which is about as normal as you can get, needing to make up like missed school days. But this normal life didn't last very long for her. She met this lawyer, Larry Rudolph, and Larry had a rejected Toni Braxton song, and this is what Brittney would actually film her demo over. And as everyone's kind of going the group route, that girl Nikki ended up joining a girl group, and of course NSYNC was happening around this time, Backstreet Boys, but Brittney decided that she wanted to go the solo route. She didn't want to do the whole group thing, so she decided here that it was just going to be her. She meets this man, Clive, and she has no idea who this man is, but he is the man that actually started Jive Records. Him and Brittney really hit it off, and she had other meetings throughout the day, but he eventually did sign her that same day at the age of 15. And this is the point when Felicia enters Brittney's life, and she is kind of Brittney's personal assistant, chaperone, best friend. She's just always there in Brittney's life at this point. Her and Felicia lived in a New York City apartment together, but Brittney was in the studio so much, days on end. She wouldn't see the sun for days. There was a story where she actually was in the studio for so long, and she went to a barbecue and she couldn't see the screen door and she ran into it, and this is described as like her most embarrassing time in her entire life. She still thinks about this. And that just like traumatized her. But she meets Max Martin. From this meeting with Max Martin, we get Baby One More Time. Her and Max had a really just intimate dinner, the two of them. Normally she eats with like handlers or other people around, but It was just the two of them, and she really liked him. And he was from Sweden, so Britney flew back to Sweden and just started recording over there. She said it really didn't matter where she was recording because she was in the studio so much that it didn't matter if she was in LA or Sweden or anywhere, it felt the same to her. So the night before recording Baby One More Time, she hears the song Tainted Love. She loves that like kind of gravelly voice that is happening, and she takes inspiration and puts that on the song. So at this time, Britney was doing a lot of like mall tours. She was opening up for NSYNC, and she just had a lot going on, and so she got the security guard, Big Rob. Also, her and Justin are dating at this time, and she recalls a story of when her and Justin were walking around a smaller New York City neighborhood that Britney didn't really frequent, and they came across this black guy, and Justin like ran up to him, and that's when we get the famous faux shiz quiz quote.
Oh yeah, faux shiz, genuine. What's up, homie?
She did say that Justin kind of got his inspiration from the black community, and that's kind of heavily what he leaned on for inspiration. And so this person was Genuine, and Genuine was wearing a massive necklace, and so that inspired Justin to go get a massive T necklace for Timberlake. At this point in her life, there's just a lot of exciting things going on. She is a little bit of annoyed that people are starting to feel more comfortable asking her about her breasts or her body and just more invasive questions, but she is also reflecting on some of the most exciting times where she saw Steven Tyler and Lenny Kravitz at an award show. She met Mariah Carey backstage. She says that she took a picture with Mariah Carey, and Mariah Carey was so particular about the lighting and everything, and this was a picture that Britney cherished, and that was the highlight of her night. Even though she did win an award that night, she reflects on the picture with Mariah Carey as the best thing from that night. And she just reflects on meeting all these exciting people, and this was just a really good time in her life. But the media at this point had started to kind of make her into a role model, and her management team was pushing her into this persona of being a role model, and Britney never wanted that. She never wanted to be a role model for people. She started to struggle with that, and she did start to take Prozac. This is when she kind of went into self-preservation mode. She tried to not read the negative comments as much, and she just really started to go into herself. But while she was doing this, the Oops, I Did It Again tour was happening. This tour was huge. She ended up paying off all of her dad's debt, and she bought her mom a house. 2001, we get the Super Bowl halftime show, and she did this with Steven Tyler. They did I Love Rock and Roll, and she just reflects on how amazing of a person Steven Tyler was. That year, she was also named Forbes' most powerful woman, and she just had so much going on about her, and the paparazzi were so invested in her that it was said that she kept some of the tabloid magazines alive, basically paid all of it, and that's how they kept afloat, was just through tabloids about Britney. And so she was a big deal at this point. And this is when we get the infamous Snake VMA performance. And Britney reflects on having only met this snake one time prior, and the snake is getting put around her, and she is absolutely terrified. She goes on stage, she performs, but she says that there's a portion that is cut or you just don't see it, and the snake is like in her face hissing. And she's terrified, and she cannot get the snake off of her quick enough, and just no thank you. This is also when she does her gigantic Pepsi commercial, which I think the song was like Pepsi Joy. It was a bop if you ever heard it. It was a great commercial, well done. Pepsi used to do really cool commercials. They don't have any commercials anymore, I don't think, but top tier marketing then. She also started her partnership with Shonda Rhimes, and from this partnership, we get the Oscar-winning Crossroads movie. It is a great movie. In it, Britney Spears does play this kind of more innocent Southern girl named Lucy, and Britney unintentionally starts to method act. She becomes Lucy, and she kind of loses herself in this character. And she says that one time her and a friend are at CVS, and she just snapped out of it, and she was like, what have I been doing these last few months? And after that, she was kind of terrified to take another acting role because she didn't want to lose herself in a role and just start accidentally method acting again. But Britney auditioned for The Notebook, and it was actually down to her and Rachel McAdams. And she says that while she would have loved to reunite with her Mickey Mouse Club Ryan Gosling, she turned down the role. And later she says that she is very glad that she didn't take that role. No regrets there. Now she's kicking off her Dream Within a Dream tour. And this choreography was choreographed by Wade Robson. And this choreography was a lot more mature and a little bit just more sexy than Britney had done before. And so she was kind of stepping out of this box that everybody had tried to put her in of the Southern good girl. Also, during this time, she had hosted SNL twice, and she was the youngest person to ever perform and host the show. She also got offered a role in the movie Chicago, and she did turn it down, which later she said she really regretted turning that down. She wishes she would have said yes to that role, so a little bit of regret there. And at this point, her and Justin Timberlake are in Orlando. They have a house together, they're living together. Her whole family comes out to visit them, and they actually shut down a FAO Schwartz completely for them to go shopping. And she remembers Jamie Lynn getting this like little motorized convertible, and this was just a really happy memory for her. She reflects on Jamie Lynn's life, and she kind of says it's more like the Seven Ring song by Ariana Grande, because she pretty much did get everything she wanted. She says that there is this tradition in the South where it is not uncommon for people to dress alike or match, and from this brilliant idea, we get the denim matching outfits. Iconic. Justin is later quoted as saying, like, you do crazy things when you're in love, and Britney did agree with that, and she just thought this was just she loved this idea. There were rumors swirling around that Justin was cheating on Britney, but she was so in love with him that she just really kind of chose to ignore it, and she was just blinded by love. One of her friends came up to her and said that she had been out, and she overheard Justin saying to another friend, "I tapped that last night," but Britney really just chose to look the other way, and she said, oh, he was just high and didn't mean it. Though there were lots of rumors started about Britney cheating, she does admit that there was one time that she stepped out on the relationship with Justin, and that was with Wade Robson, but she confessed to Justin and they overcame that as a couple. At this point is when she did get pregnant with Justin's baby. He was not ready to become a father, and she wanted to get the abortion for him if he wasn't ready. But the horrible thing is that she was not able to go to a doctor because she didn't want the tabloids. Again, she didn't want this to be in the media. So she was actually at home, and the only two people that were there were Felicia and Justin, and she had to take pills and pass the fetus basically. And she reflects on this as like the most painful period of her entire life. And she was just in excruciating pain. This messed Britney up for a really long time, and she said it was really hard to overcome this. She did say that she should have seen the breakup coming, but she was just so blinded by love, she chose to ignore it. So this is when Justin started recording his solo album, Justified, and he becomes distant. He's really separating himself from Britney, and she thinks she is being used as ammo for this record. Justin breaks up with her over text while she is in the middle of recording the music video for the Dark Child remix of Overprotected. And she recalls being in her trailer and getting the text and then having to go back out and film like a whole dancing section and just look like she's completely fine when her boyfriend had just broken up with her over text. This breakup put Britney into complete shock. She wouldn't speak for months. She basically was comatose. She went back to Kentland, Louisiana, and she just was comatose for months. Justin did fly out to see her, and he brought her this letter that he framed, which she still has under her bed to this day. And the last sentence says, "I can't breathe without you." And that is exactly what Britney was feeling. During this time, she was touring, and she reflects on a very scary time of when they were crossing over into Mexico and they had gotten held up at gunpoint. She really isn't sure how it got resolved, but it was just a very scary time in her life, and the rest of the tour did end up getting canceled because there was a thunderstorm. Britney wanted a break after this tour. She really just wanted a break, and this terrified people. They didn't want her to take a break. But Britney went home, and her team had organized for people to come out to her house and do this photo shoot, basically proving that she was okay and doing well and all this stuff, when in reality she wasn't. They even made her empty out her purse to prove that she was not on drugs at this time. She said life was very hard at this time. She was missing Justin, she was missing his family, and she just was falling apart inside. And she said that Jamie Lynn was basically a bitch, that she would sit on the couch and basically get fed anything she wanted and just watch TV, and she was just mean. But Britney, she needed a confidence boost, and she flew out to Milan to meet with Donatella Versace, and she was supposed to perform at one of her runway shows, but instead they just played Britney's cover of I Love Rock and Roll. And then afterwards, she went to this party and she was really just trying to gain all of her confidence back. Across the room, she saw this guy and she was like, hey, you're really cute. So thought he'd be great for a one night stand. Just kind of wanted to pick him up, have a little fun. And they got in her car and they were driving back to her place. And she says that he does something, she doesn't say what it is, that just gave her the ick. And she just kicked him out on the side of the road, wherever they were going. And she just, that's it. Just drove away, never see him again. At this time, Justin went on 2020 and he was debuted Don't Go Horrible Woman. And of course, this portrayed Britney in just a horrible light. And then to add insult to injury, Cry Me a River came out and there's this actress that looks so similar to Britney playing this role. And he's again saying that she cheated on him. At this time, everybody thought Britney was the cheater and they were just listening to this narrative that he was putting forward. She couldn't go anywhere. She reflects on a time she went to the Lakers game and she was completely booed by the entire stadium. So at this point in time, the narrative is really hard that Britney kind of cheated on Justin. And while this is all going on, and like right after they break up, Justin goes out and sleeps with like 6 or 7 women while Britney's at home crying in her bed. He did go on, I can't remember what show or something, and he did out that Britney was no longer a virgin, which she says she wasn't really mad about because she was kind of happy he did it because they were still trying to portray this like good girl role model into her 20s, and she was glad that he did it and she didn't have to do it. She did say that there was something Oprah told her. Oprah said her sexuality was nobody's business and didn't require a world announcement, which she really resonated with. At this time, she did go on, she calls it this magical spiritual trip to Arizona with one of her best friends. And she just came back revived and like a whole different person. Enter Colin Farrell. She was very forward about her interest in him. She drove to the set of his movie that he was filming at the time called SWAT, and she sat in the director's chair. After they were done filming a scene, Colin goes up to her and asks for pointers, and that's kind of how they hit it off. And later he invited her to a movie premiere for the movie Ruthless, and she reflects now that she was actually wearing a pajama top, which is just a fun little fact. She reflects on this relationship with Colin as just very passionate and very heated, and she just loved Colin's family, and she just really looked highly on this relationship. She did say that she was used to disappointment in her love life. At this point, she kind of really goes into her social anxiety, and I think that really plays into even the Britney that we see today. It's a lot of her social anxiety, and this is kind of where she starts to experience it and talk about it. She did try to combat her social anxiety by trying to host a New Year's Eve party with Natalie Portman, but her anxiety was just getting worse. At this time, Justin was touring with Christina Aguilera, and they had just done the cover of Rolling Stone together. And in it, Christina was quoted as saying that she thinks that Justin and Britney should get back together, which Britney says was really weird because she just had nothing good to say when they were together, and she thinks that this was kind of a dig at her from Christina. So Britney, she moves back to New York, and she actually moves into a apartment in NoHo that was Cher's, and she really does not leave this apartment a lot. She reflects on one time that she did leave the apartment. She got into the elevator and there was a man that made her laugh, and she turned around and it was Robin Williams, R.I.P. She said she really only spoke to her security and Felicia. She did try to go to a club with her cousin one time, and she did try to smoke weed, but she just really said it was too much for her. And at this time, Madonna had actually reached out to her, and Madonna was really a lifeline for her. And this is when her and Madonna really connected, and Britney got into Hebrew and all that stuff. She did get a tattoo on her that was in Hebrew, and I can't remember what it said, but she just was really into that culture and that faith. From the relationship of Britney and Madonna, we get the infamous kiss from the VMA performances. They said that they had rehearsed it so many times and it was always an air kiss, but right before they went on, they said, let's do it. And it was a mutual agreement from the two of them, and they just went for it. And this really made Britney want Madonna on her next album, and instead of having her people ask, she went to Madonna directly and she agreed, and this is when we get in the zone. During the filming of this music video, something went wrong with Madonna's outfit or something like that, and Britney reflects on how everything kind of stopped and we all waited for her outfit to be fixed. And Britney said, I would have gone on with like a ripped costume, a heel broken, whatever, I would have pushed through. But seeing Madonna set these boundaries, this really inspired her to want to become a stronger person, but kind of keep that nicety that she had. And she just knew that she wanted to become this stronger person. She loved In the Zone. She went to clubs to promote it. And while she was doing this like club tour, she was reminded by her fans why she does what she does. She said that the fans just like reinvigorated her. And this was a time that she really connected with all of her fans. After this, she says that there was a time where she comes in and her dad and 3 men were sitting on a couch that she still has to this day, and they were pretty much set up to do a Diane Sawyer interview. This was really awkward for Britney. She wasn't given any of the questions. She wasn't really given a heads up, and Diane just really drilled her about Justin. She said, "What did you do to make Justin so sad?" And I just want to know how Diane Sawyer feels about this, because this is just incredibly rude, and I can't believe she did that. Brit was mortified during all of this, and this pushed her to want to rebel kind of, and she wanted to start having fun, and she went to the Palms, and that is when Paris Hilton met her there, and we kind of go to our party girl phase. There's one night where she gets real hammered and she is watching Mona Lisa Smile and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre with one of her childhood friends, and at 3:30 in the morning they decide it's a great idea to go get married at the Little White Chapel. The next morning, she's obviously hungover and her whole family comes storming in, and she is confused as to why this is such a big deal, but her family is freaking out, and she thinks that it's because they were worried that someone else was going to come in and affect the money and affect the way that she was spending the money, or just have control, and they didn't want that. So within 55 hours, this marriage was completely annulled. She did this because she wanted to rebel. And that's what she did against her family. She kind of loved it. In reality, she really wanted to settle down at this point, but she does do the Onyx Hotel tour. But at this time, she does start the Onyx Hotel tour. Her brother is working for her at this point, but he is living in LA and working for her. And she said that she really felt like she lost Justin and her brother at the same time, which was just a really sad excerpt. During this tour, Britney hurt her knee, and after that, she really just kind of started to mentally check out. She was done. But while she was at a club in Hollywood, she met Kevin Federline. She reflects on the night that they met and says that he just held her in a pool all night long, which, good for them. Obviously, him and Britney end up getting married, but Kevin didn't quite tell her that he had a toddler, and there was another woman that was 8 months pregnant with his child. His excuse for this was he said he only saw them once a month. So, great dad. In 2002, she goes back on tour with Kevin, and she reflects on this as just the great life. This is when they start filming, and it becomes, I think it's like Britney and Kevin Chaotic, and it becomes their own little reality TV show. Somewhere along the line, Britney proposes to Kevin. He says no, but turns around and proposes to her. And of course, she said yes. This is all happening during the Onyx Hotel tour, and Britney says that she really didn't like this tour because it was just too sexual. And she wanted it to end, and she even reflected on she was praying for a broken bone because she wanted this to end so badly. And during this, she did end up hurting her knee, and the tour was canceled. During this, though, she was put on bed rest, and she did start Vicodin. Around this time is when Jamie Lynn started the Zoe 101 and kind of started her little TV fame, and Britney says that she wished she could have just stuck with a little TV show and kept that kind of fame. And in 2004, her and Kevin were married, and she says that after the ceremony, she put on a pink, juicy couture sweatsuit and went to a club, and they danced all night long. After that, she became pregnant, and she said when she was pregnant, all she liked was food and sex. Other than that, she was a complete monster. But throughout all of this, Kevin was always out with his friends. He was always smoking weed, and he was trying to become this rapper, and he got a little taste of fame, and it just completely changed him. Britney said that she had seen fame change a lot of people around her, and it was doing this to Kevin. She said that she did think she was different than the woman he had done this to before with the 2 kids, and just kind of leaving them in the dust. She did think she was different. At one point, Brittney did fly out to New York to be with Kevin. He was working with a producer that used to work for Brittney. And when she got there, he refused to see her. And then after he would refuse to see her, he would come home and he would be bragging about all these parties of, oh, I went to a party and I saw Justin Timberlake, Lindsay Lohan was there. And in Brittney's head, she's just like, I've already been to all of these parties. I know this. Like, this is, you're dating Britney Spears. Like, come on, dude. But she didn't say this. And then she just kind of reflects on a lot of times where she tries to see Kevin and he refuses to see her, but yet she sees him like smoking pot with friends or hanging out with friends. And there's just a few examples of these throughout the book. Brittney gave birth pretty close together. After 3 months of giving birth to her first child, she was pregnant again. So she was pregnant pretty like just back to back for solid 2 years. And she said that she was struggling with her hormones so badly where she tried to control everything and it was just getting to a point where it was really bad. And this is when kind of her mental health just starts to really go downhill. Felicia is kind of in and out of her life. We start to get a lot of hair transformation. This is just a really chaotic time in her life, but she is recording Blackout and she said that she felt such a freedom while recording this. But the paparazzi were insane and she actually had to like speed record this because of how crazy the paparazzi was. And this was like the quickest album that she had turned around. All of this is going on while she's also struggling in her relationship with Kevin. Her team tells her that she should file for divorce from Kevin before he does to kind of save face, but this completely backfires. The media paints her as the woman that's trying to break up her family and divorce this guy and just paints her as the evil person again. Now starts just a tumultuous custody battle. There is back and forth where Kevin has sole custody pretty much, but he refuses Brittney to see the kids ever, and she's just begging to see her children. Throughout these custody battles is when we get the hair shaving story and the umbrella. Basically, the paparazzi is harassing her and she tries to go to Kevin's house to see her kids and they weren't supposed to know where she was, somehow got leaked, and they are basically taking photos of her while she's getting denied from Kevin to see her kids, and she wants privacy at this point and she loses it. For the hair shaving incident, she just goes into a hair shop, pretty much just starts shaving her head and she loves it. She's like, I need to give them something to look at. Here you go. With the umbrella, she pretty much said that she grabbed anything that she could in the car. That was the closest thing. And she never wanted to hit the guy, but she hit the next best thing, which was his car. So that's where we get those two stories, which truthfully reading through them, it's like I understand. I kind of understand where she's coming from. This woman had been followed, harassed, pushed to limits, and it is just incredible what she has gone through. Lynn told her that she wanted her to go to rehab. Brittney said that she really didn't have a problem with drugs. The only thing she was taking was a lot of ADHD medicine, and Lynn said that if you go to rehab, you will get 50-50 custody of your children, so Brittney went. After rehab, she did get the 50-50 custody that she was promised, and Blackout comes out, and she has to promote Blackout, and she does a performance at the VMAs. And this performance, nothing was going right for her. She was backstage, she said that her clothing didn't fit, the music wasn't right, just everything was going wrong, and then she sees Justin backstage, and she just has this impression that everything is going so right in his life, and then she goes on stage and she just did not like this performance. She said that this was not a good performance for her, and she goes backstage and she starts crying hysterically. And while she's backstage crying, up on stage is Sarah Silverman roasting her. And after all of this, Dr. Phil calls her a train wreck. For Blackout, she really didn't do a lot of press. I think she was really struggling with the paparazzi and the press at this point, but she did do an interview with Ryan Seacrest, and he just grilled her about being a mom and what was going on, and just really bombarded her with all of these questions that she just felt like she was not in it for. She was here to promote her album and she didn't want to be questioned about her parenting. And at this time, all of her management had quit and Kevin was again taking her to court for full custody. And one of her previous bodyguards actually testified for Kevin in court and said that he had seen Brittney using drugs. She said that this was not true. Another time, she said that the security was coming to do the custody exchange, and she had put one of her kids in the car and she had the other one with her, and this was like a triggering moment for her where she thought she was never going to see her kids again, and she just ran to the bathroom, locked herself in the bathroom with the kid, and just started crying. She did not want to give this baby up because she was scared she was never going to see her kids again. Someone had knocked on the door and said, "We want you to come out. We'll wait for you to come out," or something like that. They called the cops, and it was a huge spectacle. They took her away in a gurney, and she was admitted for a 72-hour hold, but she was released before the 72-hour hold. In 2008, she is hospitalized, and she describes herself as hell on wheels. She just was taking a lot of ADHD medicine. She did meet this guy, Adnan. Her family does not like him. So they escape to Mexico to kind of get away from everything. While she's there, she gets a phone call from her mom saying that she has to come back. The police are looking for her. Brittney goes, and she knows immediately something's off. Even the guy says, like, something's off, right? And she knows that it's just a weird situation. This is when they started to implement the conservatorship. Her dad implemented 2 different kinds of conservatorships at this point. He did of self, so of Brittney, and of estate. So he could control all of her money, and he can control her. Later on, she does look back, and she notices that her dad paid himself way more than he paid her, and was just paying other people like hundreds of thousands of dollars. During this time, there is a lawyer that is put on her conservatorship by the dad, and she is under the impression that this is the only lawyer she can go with. She cannot go find her own. This is her lawyer. When in reality, she could go find any lawyer she wanted, but nobody told her this. Also, her mom was friends with like the governor of Louisiana, and she never like called to explain anything to Brittney or never tried or anything. They just really left all of this pushed under the rug. She was confused how she couldn't make decisions on if she could feed herself, if she could drive. If she was this incompetent, why were they sending her to go film an episode of How I Met Your Mother and then go on like a world tour? This was very perplexing to her. This is just a crazy time. She finds out that her dad is like double dipping with the record and then paying himself or something like that. And her mother releases the memoir and just tries to capitalize on everything. And her dad was just calling her fat. And this is when she says that her mental state really started to regress back into like a child mental state. During all of this though, Jamie and Lynn, they do get back together because Lynn is like happy that he has a job and is paying himself, which is just the conservatorship of managing their daughter. And during all of this, she is dating this guy, Jason Trawick. Jason is one of her brother's friends, and she really loved him, but at some point he became co-conservator of her conservatorship after they were engaged, and Brittney just said that she fell out of love with him. That was it. She was done. They stopped sleeping in the same room, and she didn't care. She was just done. Now we dive into a Vegas residency. This gave her confidence back, and she starts dating this guy named Charlie. Charlie is really into fitness, and this is when he introduces her to over-the-counter energy supplements. And everything is monitored for Brittney, even bathroom breaks, everything. So Jamie started to notice that she had more energy on tour. He made her go to rehab. She was gone for a month. She could not see her kids or anything. And there was a chef there, and she just remembers begging for a cheeseburger, and they weren't allowed to have cheeseburgers. She had chicken and canned vegetables, and this was what she was allowed to eat. And it was just Groundhog Day over and over and over for this poor woman. There was this very sad story of when her and her backup dancers went to dinner, and she wanted to pay for dinner for all of them to just show how appreciative she was. And it was $1,000, and her card got declined because she didn't have enough allowance in her account to pay for the dinner. She said that in 2014, she did push to end the conservatorship, but pretty much everyone ignored her. Nothing went anywhere. And then she met Sam on the set of her video for Slumber Party. Sometime along dating, she starts taking the energy pills again. Dad finds out, sends her back to rehab. But at this time, she can do outpatient. So as long as she goes to AA meetings, she can go to outpatient. And these women inspired her. She actually started to enjoy going to the AA meetings. She did have to go to every single one, which the schedule was just too much. She had too much going on. She had doctor's appointments all day and just a lot going on at this point. So at this point, Brittney is really just describing how crazy the conservatorship is. She says that her dad has even bugged her house and watches her texts and phone calls and everything. So we kind of just get a look into that. Also, we get a look into that infamous like Kelseyyellenn Spears presenting and Brittney kind of looking pissed off. She says that she was getting presented the first ever Radio Disney Icon Award, and Kelseyyellenn and like a few other singers were up there kind of doing these fun plays with her song, and she had been asking to do this for like 13 years, was never allowed to, and here was her sister doing it on stage instead of her. So she was very appreciative of everything, but she did say that she was pissed about that. While she was back on tour, she was promised 2 vacations a year, and there was one year where basically they took away her vacation, and instead of her having like a full summer to herself with the kids, she only got 2 weeks. So there's just a lot of manipulation, and truthfully, the driving force for Brittney is her kids. She will do anything to see those kids, and that's just a common theme throughout the book of she will drive herself crazy to see them. She even drove herself crazy enough where they put her on lithium, and she said that this was just a complete warp of time and so groggy, and this is what they had put her grandmother on before she had killed herself. So Brittney really did not want to be on lithium. And at this point, she's in the facility. She's really just not doing well. She's starting to gain weight because she's not moving around as much. Her clothes aren't fitting. Her dad's still calling her fat, all of these things. And one day a nurse calls her over to the computer screen and shows her the Free Britney movement. And after this, Brittney gets to go home, and now her family is flying in like, we're so proud of you and all of this stuff. And she says like, oh, we're so happy to see your money. I mean you, or something like that. And it's just so sad. And she realizes that her family is probably just using her for the money at this point. At this point, COVID hits, and she is in Los Angeles, which has crazy lockdown rules and everything. Her family is in Louisiana, and they are living their life, walking around, no lockdown rules really. So she wants to fly back to Louisiana. And when she does, she gets there and she realizes that her family had thrown out everything of hers from a kid. She had poems that she had songs that she never wanted to release, but just words that meant something to her, and she wanted to keep it, and they just threw it away. And at this point, she said that she made peace with the fact that she would just never see her family again, and that was okay with her. And then on June 22nd, 2001, she called 911 to report conservatorship abuse by her father. This catapulted everything pretty much. She said it was a really rough time when it was between being in the conservatorship and out of the conservatorship. Jamie released her book. Friends were doing interviews about her that she just never thought that they would, and it was just a really rough time for her in limbo. But she eventually got this lawyer, Matt Rosengard, and he gets Jamie removed, and he is off the conservatorship, and now Brittney is free. And she kind of just goes into detail about her freedom, and she brags about her kids, and she just really kind of wraps it up with where she's at now. It's just an incredible story of heartache. And you look at this woman, and we've all seen what's happening on Instagram, and we all kind of know that something's not right. But to hear everything, it is just so heartbreaking that at every turn this woman has been given the short end of the stick, and no wonder this woman went crazy, and just how much we don't know that goes on behind the scenes. I know this was a longer video, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm going to try and insert as many like photos or videos as I can into this to kind of just give like a visual with the story, but I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.